Ice cream used to feel like the safest thing in your freezer. A guaranteed comfort, a simple joy, a scoop of nostalgia. But what if I told you that some of the most popular brands right now have been quietly tied to food recalls, contamination scares, even hospitalizations, and they're still sitting on grocery shelves like nothing happened? In the last 3 months alone, over 100,000 cartons of ice cream have been recalled across the United States. The reasons? Listeria outbreaks, missing allergen warnings, even stray pieces of plastic and metal. One tainted batch led to multiple deaths from a bacteria you can't taste, can't smell, and can't detect until it's too late. And that's only the part you're allowed to hear about. Most recalls are voluntary, handled with quiet press statements and buried PDFs that the public never sees. No loud warnings at checkout. No big red flags in the freezer aisle. Just silent withdrawals that protect companies while leaving consumers in the dark. So here's the real question. If brands can keep failing and still earn your trust, how safe is the next scoop you take? Today, we're exposing the 5 names you should never put in your cart, and the 2 brands that actually pass the test. Number 1, Blue Bunny. Blue Bunny is one of those brands that looks harmless on the surface. Family-friendly colors, classic American image, the kind of ice cream you'd expect to find at school events or neighborhood parties. But beneath that cheerful exterior, 2025 has been a rough year for the brand's safety record. Just a few months ago, their parent company, Wells Enterprises, announced a major recall that affected over 18,000 tubs of ice cream and frozen yogurt. The reason? Pieces of plastic that somehow made their way into sealed cartons. Now think about that. Not bacteria that can be tested for, not a labeling slip-up that can be caught on paper, but actual foreign material physically mixed into a product sold nationwide. And it wasn't limited to a niche flavor. 22 different flavors had to be pulled back, ranging from family staples to special editions. These weren't luxury pints sitting in boutique shops. They were mass-market products distributed coast to coast, stocked in schools, cafeterias, and discount chains. And here's the part that should concern you. Blue Bunny is not a small local brand. It's one of the biggest players in the U.S. freezer aisle, backed by a corporate machine that handles everything from Halo Top to private label store brands. When something like plastic contamination slips through at that scale, it isn't just a production error. It's a sign that oversight is breaking down in a system designed for speed and volume over care. The recall itself was labeled voluntary, which sounds responsible until you realize what that really means. No front page news, no direct consumer warning, just a quiet PDF filed with the FDA, while thousands of cartons were already bought, eaten, or tossed into home freezers. Some families never even heard about it. And that's the pattern. Recalls are treated like paperwork problems, not public health issues. Blue Bunny continues to present itself as wholesome, but what this episode shows is clear. In a race to push out millions of tubs at the lowest cost, safety is never guaranteed. If a chunk of plastic can slip in without notice, what else is sliding past the checkpoints? That's a question no smiling mascot on the carton can answer. Number 2, Turkey Hill. Turkey Hill loves to sell the idea of small-town roots, rolling Pennsylvania farmland, and homemade tradition. The packaging leans into that story. Family barns, country charm, the kind of design that makes you think it's safer than the flashy corporate competitors. But 2025 ripped the mask off that image when the brand was forced to issue a recall after shards of metal were found in their chocolate marshmallow flavor. That's not a typo. Actual metal shavings inside cartons meant for everyday grocery stores across America. Not mold, not a missing label, but physical fragments that could slice a mouth, lodge in a throat, or cause internal bleeding if swallowed. The recall swept through hundreds of cartons that had already been shipped nationwide, and yet the public only heard about it after it was too late. The deeper problem isn't just the metal itself, it's what it represents. Turkey Hill isn't the tiny Pennsylvania dairy it once pretended to be. After being acquired by a private equity firm, the brand went into hyper-growth mode. More flavors, bigger distribution deals, nationwide expansion. But while sales soared, quality controls fell behind. Facilities weren't scaling fast enough to match demand, suppliers were stretched thin, and shortcuts began creeping into the chain. Worse, Turkey Hill has increasingly leaned on third-party manufacturers, contractors who produce tubs under their label but far from their headquarters. That means your ice cream might not even come from a Turkey Hill facility. It could be made 2 states away on machines overdue for maintenance under contracts that reward speed and volume over safety. And because the system allows it, no one has to tell you where your specific tub was produced. The brand still markets itself as wholesome and down to earth, but when pieces of metal can end up in the carton, the message is clear. Nostalgia is a marketing tool, not a safety guarantee. The recall was treated as a minor blip, a small error corrected, with no real accountability for how the contamination happened in the first place. That's the danger. When growth comes first and oversight comes second, You're left gambling your health on a brand that isn't nearly as homemade as it wants you to believe. Number 3, Halo Top. On the surface, Halo Top looks like the answer to modern guilt. Bright pastel pints, bold calorie counts printed right on the lid, the promise that you can eat a whole tub and still stay on track. It markets itself as healthy ice cream, low calorie, high protein, almost too good to be true. And that's exactly the problem. It is too good to be true. For starters, the recipe relies heavily on gums, stabilizers, and sugar alcohols to create that texture without the calories. It's not just milk, cream, and sugar. It's erythritol, soluble corn fiber, and a cocktail of additives engineered to mimic ice cream while cutting costs and calories. That's why many people report stomach pain, bloating, or worse after eating it. What looks like a guilt-free indulgence on the surface can hit your system like a science experiment. And Halo Top's parent company, Wells Enterprises, has had its own share of trouble. Remember the plastic contamination that triggered a recall in 2025? Halo Top was part of that recall too. Dozens of flavors and thousands of units had to be pulled from distribution because the tubs could have contained foreign fragments. The irony here is sharp. A brand sold as the smart alternative to traditional ice cream still ended up flagged for one of the oldest, most basic safety failures in the industry, but the bigger issue goes deeper than one recall. It's the way Halo Top has built its empire on marketing over substance. By printing calorie counts on the front of the carton, the brand shifted attention away from what's actually inside. Most consumers never read the ingredient list. They see 280 calories for a pint, grab it, and trust the label. And yet the very product is designed around cutting corners with stabilizers and bulking agents that have little to do with nutrition or quality. The worst part? This has become the model for healthy desserts across the industry. Other brands now follow Halo Top's playbook, slashing calories while pumping in additives. That's the legacy. What started as a fad has reshaped the freezer aisle into a place where flashy calorie math matters more than clean ingredients. And when a company that already sells you processed shortcuts can also get caught in contamination recalls, you're left with the uncomfortable truth. Healthy ice cream might not be healthy, and it definitely isn't safe. Number 4, Bluebell. Bluebell is a name that carries weight in the South. For generations, families have loaded their freezers with those familiar cartons, trusting the brand as part of backyard barbecues, school events, and Sunday dinners. But loyalty doesn't erase history, and when it comes to food safety, Bluebell has one of the darkest track records in the industry. Back in 2015, Bluebell was at the center of a deadly Listeria outbreak that killed multiple people and sickened many more. The contamination was traced back to the company's facilities, and the fallout forced Bluebell to temporarily shut down operations. It was a wake-up call that should have changed the company forever. But here we are, a decade later, and the problems haven't gone away. In 2025, Bluebell was once again forced into the spotlight for the wrong reasons. This time, it wasn't Listeria, but allergen mislabeling. One of their products, packed into the wrong container, failed to warn customers about the presence of nuts. For families with severe nut allergies, that's not a small mistake. It's a life or death gamble. A single spoonful could mean seizures, respiratory collapse, or worse. Yet the incident was brushed off as a minor error, handled with a quiet voluntary recall and no major consequences. And that's the larger problem with Bluebell. These aren't isolated mistakes. They're part of a pattern. Recalls treated like paperwork problems, not systemic failures. Products keep reaching schools, nursing homes, and grocery chains without the level of oversight you'd expect from a company with a record this severe. Regulators let it slide, retailers keep stocking it, and consumers, wrapped in nostalgia, keep buying. Meanwhile, the branding tells a completely different story. The packaging whispers of tradition, homemade goodness, and a connection to the past. But behind those soft colors and farm-fresh slogans is an industrial operation cutting costs, outsourcing oversight, and hiding behind the gaps in America's recall system. At the end of the day, Bluebell represents the most dangerous kind of brand, the one that has already proven it can cause real harm, but still manages to sell itself as trustworthy. And when trust becomes a marketing tool instead of a promise, you're left with a scoop that could be as risky as it is sweet. Number 5, Ben & Jerry's. For a lot of people, Ben & Jerry's is more than ice cream. It's a cultural icon, the brand that built its identity on quirky flavors, social causes, and rebellious marketing. A pint of Cherry Garcia or half-baked feels less like a product and more like a statement. But in 2025, even Ben & Jerry's carries red flags that are harder to ignore. The biggest concern has come from what's not listed on the label: chemical residues. Independent tests have repeatedly found traces of glyphosate, a pesticide more commonly associated with industrial farming than premium dessert. We're talking about a chemical the World Health Organization has linked to cancer risk, slipping into flavors sold as clean and socially conscious. Ben & Jerry's admitted the traces exist, but argued the levels were too low to matter. That might be legally true, but it raises a bigger question. If the progressive ice cream brand can't keep its sourcing clean, what hope is there for the rest of the aisle? Then there's the packaging. A 2021 study revealed that some of Ben & Jerry's pint containers contained PFAS, the so-called forever chemicals tied to immune disruption and other health risks. Even at trace levels, PFAS build up in the body and in the environment. And when your packaging becomes part of the contamination conversation, it's a problem money and slogans can't just wash away. All of this sits on top of a supply chain that has grown increasingly complex since the company was absorbed by Unilever, one of the largest food conglomerates on Earth. And like other Unilever products, the tension between marketing and reality becomes obvious. On the front of the carton, you see hand-drawn cows and slogans about peace and love. But behind the curtain, it's multinational sourcing, bulk contracts, and global production that's anything but homemade. None of this means Ben & Jerry's is the worst ice cream in the freezer aisle, but it does mean the trust you place in that pint might not match the reality inside. Because when a brand sells itself as ethical, as premium, as progressive, the bar for safety and transparency is higher. And right now, the gap between the story and the facts is wide enough to make even the most loyal fans pause before reaching into the freezer. Now, before you give up on ice cream completely, take a breath, because not every scoop is a trap, and not every brand is cutting corners while cashing in on nostalgia. A few names still stand for transparency, still value quality over volume, still put safety before shortcuts, and if you've been looking at the freezer aisle with suspicion, here's one you can actually trust. Number 1, Strauss Family Creamery. Strauss Family Creamery has something almost no national competitor can claim in 2025. Every single ice cream they sell is certified organic. Not technically organic, not half organic, not wrapped in vague wording. Full, real, certified organic, from the dairy to the sugar to the add-ins. That commitment alone sets them apart in an industry where brands twist language to stay profitable. Strauss is based in Northern California, and they make everything themselves in their own certified creamery. No shadow factories, no ghost facilities, no third-party contractors with questionable standards. That means tighter control, higher oversight, and almost no room for the kinds of mistakes we've just spent this video exposing. When metal shards or Listeria contamination hit other brands, Strauss's independence and scale kept them clean. The ingredients list tells the story. Pasture-raised dairy, organic cane sugar, real fruit, and clean flavorings. No high fructose corn syrup, no gums added to bulk up texture, no artificial flavors dressed up as natural. Even the packaging reflects their philosophy. They've invested in glass bottles and plastic-free systems, reducing microplastics and keeping chemicals from leaching into the product. And here's what makes them rare. Strauss doesn't chase reckless national expansion. They focus on regional distribution to maintain quality, not quarterly growth for shareholders. You'll find them at co-ops, Whole Foods, and specialty stores where demand follows trust, not advertising. Yes, it costs more, and yes, it's harder to find, but in a world where so many brands trade safety for margins, Strauss proves real ice cream can still mean exactly that, real. Number 2, Tillamook. Tillamook has managed to do what so many corporate brands couldn't, scale up without selling out. Based in Oregon and still structured as a farmer-owned co-op, Tillamook isn't just a company, it's a collective. Hundreds of family farmers pool resources to keep control of the supply chain, which means when you buy a tub of their ice cream, you know exactly where the milk and cream came from. That level of transparency is almost unheard of in today's food industry. What sets them apart is how little they compromise on quality. Tillamook uses more butterfat than most mainstream brands, which gives their ice cream its dense, rich texture without needing to load it with gums, fillers, or artificial stabilizers. Their ingredient lists read like food, not formulas. Milk, cream, sugar, eggs, and real flavorings. No vague natural labels hiding behind chemical shortcuts. No fillers designed to shave pennies off the cost. Just as important, Tillamook has resisted the lure of being absorbed by a food giant or private equity firm. That independence matters. It means decisions are made with long-term trust in mind, not quarterly profits. While competitors stretch themselves thin chasing national shelf space, Tillamook focuses on controlled, intentional growth that doesn't outpace its to maintain safety and consistency. In 2025, when recall notices and quiet withdrawals dominate the industry, Tillamook stands out for something simple: reliability. Not perfect, but real. When you open a carton, you're far less likely to be gambling on hidden contaminants, mislabeling, or corner-cutting recipes. And in a freezer full of uncertainty, that kind of honesty is worth paying for. Now, before you walk down that freezer aisle again, keep this in mind. 5 of the biggest names in ice cream have shown us how quickly trust melts when profits come first. But it's not all bad news. Strauss Family Creamery and Tillamook prove that honest ice cream still exists. Clear sourcing, real ingredients, and a commitment to quality that doesn't get lost in corporate spin. So the choice is yours. Keep rewarding the brands that gamble with your health, or back the ones that actually deliver on their promises. If today opened your eyes, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next deep dive.